What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, so obviously there's the big one that I've been playing, but before I jump 100% into that, I've also spent some time playing Street Fighter 6. So I've been playing it in there's the demo, and then there's also an open beta right now, which is weird that they did them a couple weeks apart, but it's there. So I got my hands on a little bit with Street Fighter 6, and I like it. You know, it's weird because it's teased me enough to the point where it's like I really just want to play this game, because the open beta is strictly just online fighting, which is fun and all, but until I've had a lot of time with the game, I don't want to get online and just get completely, my teeth punched in. But between that and the actual demo, which is the more single player demo, I've gotten sort of a feel for it, and it's weird because they've changed some things that are some core values to Street Fighter, which is mainly the control scheme. A lot of people, and I know you are pretty familiar with Street Fighter, so you know what like a move list would look like for Street Fighter. Quarter circle, back, forward, hold, forward, and then a punch and stuff like that. And so there is a new, I don't know if you've gotten your hands on or tried the demo at all, but there's what they call modern scheme.
Yeah, I have gotten to try those, yeah.
Yeah, which makes the game more playable to people who aren't super familiar with fighting games. It plays, I almost want to say, a little bit more like Mortal Kombat style. It's a little bit more simple inputs, a one main special button, so you look like you're doing your Hadoukens, your Shoryukens, you're doing all these special moves. It makes it just look like you know what you're doing, and it helps connect a little while.
Yeah.
But also it has that, the core, the core game control style as well. And it's weird because I'm in this weird realm where it's like I do like, for certain characters, I do like the traditional, like if I'm playing Ryu, I've been playing Ryu, I've played Ryu for my whole life, basically. He's not my main, but, I've always played as Ryu as well. And his moves, I know. But some of these new characters, when I jump into them, I don't mind so much jumping into the modern control scheme, where I can just, down special button and do one of their special moves. So it's really interesting. I really like it. I think it lends well. I mean, we've praised that RE engine forever, ever since it's come out, and that Capcom's been using, and I was worried what it would look like running Street Fighter 6. I think it looks fantastic. I think it's really crispy. So I've had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, the game comes out as of recording. I think Street Fighter 6 launches this weekend.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be really exciting. I like the styles of the characters. I like, I don't know how much I'm gonna play that single player mode where you create a character and you're running around Metro City. I haven't done too much of that in the demo because the progress doesn't carry over at all, so there was no real point besides that. But the character creation, very in depth. I like that, a lot of options, I like the characters, and I just, Street Fighter 6 is going to be lasting for years from this point on, the same way Street Fighter 5 did and Street Fighter 4 did. So it's going to be an exciting new platform to jump into, and I'll have probably at the next recording, so by the time that we record our next episode, I'll have some hands-on with the actual game, so it'll be really, really cool to check that out. But yeah, the big game, the thing that everyone's playing, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom has been out. It's been out, what are we looking at, 2 weeks about now?
Yeah, about so.
Roughly. And yeah, so I think, early on when we started doing the show, I was always very lukewarm on Breath of the Wild. I always talked about how a lot of things I didn't like about Breath of the Wild, what made it not feel like a Zelda game, and all the issues I had with Breath of the Wild. And I'm happy to, so I was very skeptical jumping into Tears of the Kingdom. But I'm happy to say that most, if not all, my concerns have been addressed. We're getting, right from the get-go, that's one of the most memorable openings in a Zelda game in a long time. Fast-paced. You're usually so much more just, if you think about Ocarina starting off and how slow that is, and the back and forth, and you're pulling weeds to get rupees.
Yeah.
To this opening where you're seeing, it's you, Zelda, the antagonist, everything just off the rip. Well, it's not spoilers because he's in all the trailers. Seeing Ganon so quickly, and all these abilities you're getting, and I just feel like they really nailed what I think in this more open world Zelda game could be. And should be. I always felt that Breath of the Wild felt very vacant. A lot of these side missions didn't really mean anything. It was just ways to grind so you wouldn't go to the main castle right away. And I'm glad to say that Tears of the Kingdom does the opposite, where I'm kind of engaged in some of these side missions. I'm taking my time. I'm not really going, just temple to temple to temple in the sense, because there's that first mission they give you is like, here's the 4 temples, go at it. I've ignored that. I accidentally stumbled across 2 of them just in my normal playthrough, but that makes it fun though. Instead of being like, all right, I have to get to this divine beast from Breath of the Wild, I'm doing a mission in this, the Goron area, and I accidentally started the temple. I was like, oh, well, I'm here. I found it so naturally. That's what's something that I think just really strikes me with this game. Having a, story that isn't so wrapped up in the memories. And these still have the memories, but Breath of the Wild had no memories. I had no real story besides like the beginning, a small middle, and the ending. But having a continuous it's a little bit more voice acting. I'm not completely sold on as well. I definitely switched that to Japanese. The lip sync is to the Japanese one anyway, so I couldn't do that. But yeah, from all the mechanics to this new sort of tool set you get, the sandbox moments of it, the fact that the game just encourages you to figure things out certain ways. And I'm sure it's the same with you. How many times you've done a shrine and you're like, there's no way that's how they wanted me to do it.
Oh yeah.
But it got the job done. Yeah. I'm like, you gave me the tools to do this. So it's really great. I'm having tons of fun with it. I'm taking my time with it. I'm trying not to I felt like I always rushed Breath of the Wild, and that's a little bit on the game's fault and on my fault. But now Tears of the Kingdom, playing it a couple hours a day, I'm just loving everything about it. The new abilities I think just make more sense than the abilities in Breath of the Wild, where it was like, here's a circle bomb, a square bomb, and here's this. I think the Ascend is really interesting. I think the fusion technique helps with that sort of gripe with all the weapon degradation, and it's just super creative stuff. Even I get surprised. I'm like, there's no way this will work, and I will do it, whether it's simple things of attaching a rocket to something, but sometimes I'm like, well, I have there's the goop guys, right? The choo-choos or goo-choos or whatever.
Oh,
if you
yeah.
If you attach the blue jelly after you kill them to the arrow, it basically makes it a water arrow. And there was this whole thing where I was like, I was on this lava section. I was like, if I shoot enough, I'll make a giant platform with the water and the lava. Then I can just build this tower and ascend through this thing. I was like, there's no way. And sure enough, it worked perfectly. I got to where I needed to be and completed with my task. And I just like that super just opened to the game, where I felt Breath of the Wild, a lot of these shrines and the slight dungeons and temples that were in that game were like, you had to do it almost a specific way. They were sort of designed for that. Like, make sure you use the square bomb here, circle here. There's the big meme of just build a bridge, you just build a bridge, get to where you need to go, or find where you need to go. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's quickly rising up in one of my favorite Zelda games, just because it's taken a lot of the stuff that I felt wasn't fully fleshed out in Breath of the Wild and really tweaked and pushed forward in Tears of the Kingdom. I could go on for hours talking about Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm sure at some point we will do something for it.
For sure.
But what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I got a couple small ones, and then I'll get into, obviously, the big Zelda stuff. So first, I also did try out Street Fighter 6. I'm not playing the open beta like you, but I have played the demo that they've offered in the store and played around with everything they did. And every character that they allow you to play with, I played with, which is like, 2? I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's Ryu and Lucas.
The new guy. And so, yeah, I've played around with everything I can. And, yeah, no, I really, really love the way it feels. The new control mechanism is very interesting, because I've always had this thing with fighters where I feel like there are combo-based, or not even combo-based, but move-based fighters, and there's time-based fighters. And for me, time-based fighters have always been the easier. So it's not what you do, it's when you do it. AKA like a Brawlhalla. In some ways, sometimes like Mortal Kombat's that way. Injustice can be that way, where it's like, it's not the kind of move that you do, it's just more so like, do you have an opening to do it, basically. And for me, yeah, like Street Fighter's always been very move based. So as like Tekken, for example, is a prime example of that as well. Soul Calibur. And that new move set is a little jarring, because it turns it into kind of like a time-based fighter, because of how simplified some of the controls are. So it was just a weird, like, my brain had to rewire, where it like turned into a different game for a second. I was like, I think it's one of those. It's weird because I thought it would actually work fine for me, considering the fact that like I do think I have a ton of fighting game experience. I've played for years, as you know, but I still consider myself a pretty casual consumer of fighter games, and I guess I did have some more things cemented in my brain than I thought, because I was like I couldn't play that way. I was like, it doesn't feel right, and so I had to turn it back. But no, I'm really loving the aesthetic of it, and I'm probably actually going to get this at launch. So I was kind of skeptical about it, not because obviously Street Fighter is locked in as like a franchise. I have no doubt about that. It's going to be great. But sometimes the release cadence of like characters and stuff like that, it just makes me hesitant to buy things at launch, just because I know there's going to be like 6 other iterations that include more content than the one I'm going to buy. And I don't know if the season passes or packages or whatever that I buy down the line will be the best way to go about it. But I actually don't want to wait on this one, so I'm probably actually going to get this at launch, and I'm pretty excited about that. Just the character redesigns, just the world. I'm probably not going to play around with character customization. I'm not really into all that, but I might make a character. I just probably won't use him. Yeah, no, everything I've seen so far, I'm really, really digging, and they've kind of sold me on it, so really happy with that. This is a game that I've talked about wanting to kind of play as out of morbid curiosity for a while, but I refused to give them money. And it's Pokemon Scarlet. I found a very cheap copy on eBay. So I got it secondhand because at this point I just refuse to directly compensate Game Freak for what they're putting out. And I've been kind of open about that, the ridiculous state about it. So I wanted to buy this game because maybe 2 weeks ago the 3rd major update came out for stability and performance and different stuff, and I was like, okay, I kind of want to give it a try, and I found a cheap copy, and I was like, if I can get it for like $30, maybe I'll play it. And so I did that, and I played maybe 10 hours of it. Nothing too crazy. The game, for anybody who has played it, it's in some ways 3 times as long as a regular Pokemon game, because there's kind of 3 different paths you can take. There's the gym path. There is these giant. They're essentially like they're not kaiju fights, but they're like larger boss fights, kind of, as you can imagine. And they're kind of powered up larger enemies that you can kind of hunt. They call them Titans. And then they have essentially the equivalent of like going after. Well, I think they're called Team Star, so it's like Team Rocket. And you got that path where you kind of challenge their leaders. And it's interesting. There's some good things about it. There's some not good things. So the not good things, I'll get that out of the way. The fact that it runs the way it does, like, it's worse than I thought it was. And that is mind-blowing. I've never in my life seen a game run with a frame rate like this. I've never seen that. Now, obviously, we've seen more unstable games, aka like a Cyberpunk. So my Pokemon game is not crashing on me. So I'll say that. But the fact that, like, almost in every environment, there are characters within, I don't know, 25, 30 feet of me that look like they're on a slideshow is insane. Like, that is insane. And this is this is like the 3rd version. So this is not even the first update. I've never seen something, especially from the Nintendo side, released in this state. And the fact that like months later, it's still in this state, that it's insane. Because I've seen games that have performance issues, but typically it's like, oh, I see why this is performing the way it is. Pokemon's confounding because it's like the art style is what it is, but the world is more open. Don't get it twisted. It's way more open than previous games, but it's not like I mean, again, Skyrim came out in 2011, and that game is way more expansive than this game is. Facts. Not to mention that a lot of the different environments are kind of piecemealed off, where they have a loading screen in between them in terms of like when you want to enter like major cities and stuff like that. And so it's not like it's completely open. And the fact that it runs this way and is just insane. Like, I've never seen anything like this before. And so I'm very glad that I didn't buy it directly. But, at the core, I mean, it is still a Pokemon game. But, yeah, it's weird. It is, in some ways, you could see, like, okay, this came out after Arceus, where there are, like, mechanics in there that I feel like were kind of adopted. But in many ways, it's a way worse game. No doubt about that. So yeah, there's good things about it. It is still a Pokemon game, so if you're looking for your Pokemon fix, I think you'll get it. But in terms of like the performance, like do I think it's such an insane step up above like Sword and Shield that it warrants the performance dips? Not really. Like I'd say if you want your Pokemon fix, go play Sword and Shield. You know what I mean? Like or even Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I quite enjoy a lot more. So yeah, it's a weird one. Do you know they took out clothes? Did you know that? Like
they took the clothes.
Like the ability to customize an outfit for your character, that's gone. They took it out.
That weird school outfit you have is just what it is.
You get 4 school uniforms, depending on the seasons. You can change, like if it's spring, you could wear, or like I don't think the seasons really change. You can wear a summer uniform or a spring uniform. You get 4 different uniforms, but they took out like. I remember I had a cute little black dress thing going on in Sword and Shield. That's just gone. Like there is no character customization in terms of like a full outfit. You just get different school outfits. And DLC is just releasing more school outfits. That's crazy. That's a mechanic.
That's nuts.
Boo. Again, it's one thing to not have a feature. It's another thing to have a feature and then take the feature away. Because obviously this game was like unfathomably far from being ready to launch. It's super obvious. You know how they have some games that we comment, it's like, oh, it can use a couple, could have used a couple more weeks or a couple more months in the oven. No, this game needed like a year. Like this is bad, like insane, and it still is bad. And so part of me is like confounded by them releasing it this day, and also the more I play it, the more frustrated I am. I'm like, people bought this. Like they sold millions of copies of this game. Like this is it's so crazy. So no, the game is kind of terrible. But it is giving me my Pokemon fix. Like the bare bones are there, but it's crazy. There is an auto battle thing where you can send your Pokemon out, and it like cuts the XP in like maybe by by 75% or so. Like you're getting a lot less XP, but you can battle way faster by just sending your Pokemon out, kind of like Arceus in that way. You could just like send them out, but they can battle for you, and that's a pretty cool mechanic. So it's cut my grinding down quite a bit, which again is kind of nuts because Pokemon's not a hard game. It's not a super grindy game to begin with, but they have found ways to make it easier. So there's that for people who are interested. But yeah, that game is nuts. And then lastly, Tears of the Kingdom, just like you. I don't have too many thoughts that are like divergent from everybody else. I think it's phenomenal because it's an expansion in many ways of Breath of the Wild. I think there's a solid argument that it's one of the best Zelda games of all time. Absolutely. It's obviously Game of the Year contender, no doubt about that. I am super impressed with the performance of it. Yeah, like it can get a little framey at times, especially if you try to like chasm dive from like the sky. That can get a little hairy at times, but for the most part, the fact that you can go from a plateau in the sky, skydive onto the ground, through the ground into a chasm, and then ascend back up into the middle seamlessly without a loading screen is insane. The fact that they're doing that on a Switch, just on a like fundamental level, like that's really, really impressive stuff. The fact that they're doing that on like 5-year-old hardware. Or no, actually 6-year-old hardware and like an 8-year-old chipset or something like that. It's really, really impressive. So yeah, no, I'm loving the game. I'm loving that they're a little bit more story forward this time. They do have the literal tiers that can give you the story. What I'm most impressed about that regard is that it's a linear story in the way that like you get these fixed memories, but the order in which you experience them depends entirely on what area you go to first. Like it's pretty open in that way. And so as you go to those different, I think they call them like geoglyphs. You experience these memories, and there's not a fixed order. I looked it up. I was like, people experience it in different order. So they've managed to tell a story linearly that makes sense because they give you the major story beats. You have these pillars. Okay, this happens, and this happens, and all these kind of fill in the gaps. And the order in which they fill in the gaps is not really that important. So I'm really impressed with their storytelling capabilities. The new characters are really interesting. I love the introduction of the Zonai and the early Hylians, and kind of how they kind of met up and made things go, and seeing actual Ganon, like proper Ganon, and acknowledgement of his Gerudo past, and just all. And again, I'm not going into super spoiler territory. These things that people know, but yeah, no, it's really, really interesting stuff. I'd love to do a spoiler cast on this, but yeah, I'm really, really impressed by the game. And again, this is coming from I actually liked Breath of the Wild probably a little bit more than you did. But yeah, no, I think there's no denying that this game is better than Breath of the Wild. Like, just because, again, it's an expansion on everything they did there. I love the new powers, and it's interesting where it's like things that were challenges before are no longer challenges. So like simple things like getting to the castle is actually not that hard now. You just kind of float to it if you need to. But with the lack of guardians, it's like a fundamentally different experience. But now there are like new threats about like that gets into spoiler territory, but like there are very, very scary things in the game that you could fight. And they are a welcome addition. And I still don't 100% know how to deal with them. I've encountered my first kind of like story-based mandatory one, and it's causing issues. But yeah, no, the game is phenomenal, and I have nothing but pretty much praise to say about it, because for the most part, most of the things that I have issues with about it are not really Tears of the Kingdom issues. Like I just don't like weapon degradation, for example. I'm not into it. I probably never will be. And some of those things can be frustrating. The temples at times, like some of them are really, really well designed. Some of them I'm not as keen on. It depends on, and again, that's a preference thing. But I love that they reintroduced temples and they're very well done. And and one of the things that I think frustrates me the most is I love the addition of these new kind of NPC team characters that you put together that you can kind of battle with. I hate that you have to essentially talk to them to activate their power. Like it absolutely should be in a weapon wheel somewhere, but that's just a preference thing. But yeah, no, overall, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, big thumbs up from me. Love it, and I'm excited to continue playing it. I'm like I think between 35 and 40 hours in, so with that amount of time, I'm still like I think way behind a lot of people. Like it feels like everybody's like well into like 40 to 70 hours, and I'm like still here in 35, and I feel like I barely scratched it. So, and I think I am past all the temples, and so for those who are playing, I'm past all the temples, and I am in the latter part of the game. So, do with that what you will. But yeah, no, I'm really having a great time with it.
Yeah, it is shocking. That's one thing I forgot to mention is just how well it runs for what it's on.
Relative, yeah.
Yeah, relative. My friend was asked. Another person I know asked me. He's like, yeah, but how's it running at 30 frames? And I said, it's not. Yes, you notice it, like especially when you're diving or if too many bombs or something goes off. Yes, it stutters. But I said the issue and the way they've sort of solved it is what we expect, in a game like just because I know we're gonna talk about it, in the game like The Last of Us, when you like want to turn Joel around, he has to do all that animation to turn around because it's super realistic, correct? So if that was done at like 30 frames, it's gonna look weird. In this game, when I want Link to turn around, he just turns around, and I don't think twice about it. I don't need to see him turn his head, his neck, and see his clothing swap around. No, he just faces the other way because that's what I need him to do. So it's all mixed in there, right? Because that's how they were able to, get around that limitation. Does it struggle? Yeah, there's times where the game struggles, but I think I'm surprised that at this point, especially when we saw things like Pokemon and stuff last year, that I was worried. I was like, man, will this handle it? I mean, Breath of the Wild on launch day, it had stuttering and issues like that. So I was like, here's 6 years later. Would I love to play this on a Super Switch Pro, whatever? Yeah, obviously, because it could go. And sometimes on those loading screens where when I die, cause I feel like this game in general is a little bit harder than most Zelda games, specifically Breath of the Wild, because I'm dying constantly.
A lot stronger enemies, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's enemies that are one hit killing you, and
normal people too. They're not even like bosses.
No. There's the and it's not a spoiler. There was those ninja, the Yuga clan that was in Breath of the Wild. Yeah. There's some of those guys where I'm like, piece of cake, and they will just slap me silly, and I'm dead, and I'm like, okay. But that's all sort of part of it. It's part of the experience. So, but in leading that, because I am dying a little more often, it's not a long loading screen from where game over to continue to loading up again. It's not that long, but it feels so long. Especially when we've been playing tons of stuff on PS5 that load if
instantaneous.
That,
yeah. Yeah.
So there is that time when I'm just like, even Elden Ring, when we were playing Elden Ring last year, we were like, from dying to respawning to being back where you need to be was very quick. This one, I feel like I'm just staring at that Switch, my reflection in my Switch just staring at me for, it's probably like 15 seconds, but it feels very long. But I am surprised and really proud of what Nintendo was able to do with the game on such old hardware. But yeah, I'm loving it, and it's going to be that game I'm constantly just going to keep playing. It's hard to compare where we are. Story-wise, you are probably a little bit more ahead of me. I'm only on my second temple.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But I've done, got all the towers. I did all the memories, got all the glyphs. I've been doing a bunch of other side stuff.
Gotcha.
Tons of hearts, I've got a couple stamina wheels. So I purposely have been avoiding the temples, but I think now I want to at least do those first 4 set of stuff they give you to do.
Yeah.
Which I heard then opens up another set of stuff. But yeah, it's what a great game. What a really good game.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, kind of lastly, it's that it kind of does confirm something that I think we had briefly talked about before the game came out, which it's like, this has officially, like, it's a beautiful thing to see, I think, kind of at the end of a life cycle of a console, which, I think we're on the latter half. I think everybody can agree. Whether or not we're at the end of the Switch life cycle, I mean, it depends on what Nintendo wants to do. I think we're on the last year or two, if I had to guess, but we're towards the end there, and it's a beautiful thing, I think, always in the end of a life cycle to see what the first party is capable, like the max extraction of power of a given console. And this totally, to me, feels like Last of Us in 2013, like on the PS3. Same thing with GTA 5 was also on PS3. Just a tail end again, and that. I know GTA 5 is not a first party, but in terms of just those late cycle games, pulling every bit of juice out of a console they can. And in some ways, you can even look at like Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima on PS4, but where they pulled everything, and this is the wall. And so in some ways, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom has done a beautiful thing, but also demonstrated, okay, this is the wall. This is the max of what the first party, and I think arguably, it's hard to argue against this, but probably the most talented team at the Nintendo. And Nintendo is not more explicit. Their naming conventions for the teams are really weird. But whatever their Zelda team name is, this is the max what they can do. This is the most they can take out of. Below this, we start getting into the realm of unacceptability. And again, things like Pokemon Scarlet, I'm not even factoring them in. I don't know what Game Freak, what the hell they're doing. But yeah, like in terms of what they can do, you would imagine maybe whoever makes like Odyssey and whatever Odyssey's successor is, they're probably going to get at bat before maybe the Switch ends. And then I think that has to be it. Like, I don't think anybody could do more than this. This is the most I think that can be extracted out of this hardware at this point before you start really sacrificing quality, which I know people like to take shots at Nintendo about their like visual fidelity and stuff like that, but I do think they do have a standard of quality, and I think they're not going to let their games completely fall into a mess. You know what I mean? Like, they're up against the wall here, but I think if there's at any point where like the developers are like, okay, we can't make our game run, we can't do it, Nintendo will act accordingly, and I think we're right up against that line here. So it totally feels like 2013 to me right now, where we're at the end of the PS3 generation, and those things were fighting for dear life, barely holding on, but we were getting beautiful games that were really taking the console to the next level, and a beautiful send-off. And that's what it feels like to me. Like, if the Switch ends here, like, what a beautiful send-off, Breath of the Wild starting it, Tears of the Kingdom ending it, and again, we not to say we'll probably get 1 or 2 more major first-party releases on the console before whatever the successor is, I'm sure, but yeah, no, I mean, they've done a great job, and I was really, really nervous about this game. Not that I don't have faith in that team, but anybody who has to follow up on something just so much fanfare. It's almost like that Kingdom Hearts 3 effect, you know what I mean? Like, when you release one of what some people are considered one of the best games of all time, to be able to hit that again is a scary position. Last of Us, same thing. To come back and be able to meet that, and they did. Somehow they pulled it off, and they did it in a really, really brave way, which is like, we're taking something that directly looks like the previous game that was the best game of all time in some people's eyes, and we're going to take it and we're going to expand on it. That is a ballsy move to do that. You know what I mean? It's like Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 15, some of these games that were like long awaited, they made major diversions in the aesthetic to kind of separate itself from the previous one, to reinvent it, to change it, to make it something new. But they went actually in a different direction where they're like, no, we're doing Breath of the Wild, plus 1,000. And that's a really impressive thing that they were able to pull off. So yeah, shout out to them, and we can gush more about Tears of the Kingdom, I guess, during a spoiler cast.
Yeah. So kudos to them. Really excited to keep playing. But yeah, we can move into the stories. We got some interesting ones to talk about. First one, would be a big deal if it wasn't leaking so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mortal Kombat 1 is a real thing again, which can be pretty confusing. But yeah. Warner Brothers Games and NetherRealm Studios have officially revealed that a rebooted Mortal Kombat 1 will arrive on September 19th for PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series systems, Switch somehow, and PC. Quote, the game will introduce a reborn Mortal Kombat universe that has been created by the fire god Liu Kang, featuring reimagined versions of iconic characters as they've never been seen before, along with new fighting system, game modes, bone-crushing finishing moves, and more, according to the Mortal Kombat website. The characters so far that have been shown and included Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kung Lao, Katana Melina, Shang Tsung, Johnny Cage, and of course a lot of many other staples. So yeah, Mortal Kombat, we've known for a while, Mortal Kombat, at the time we were calling it Mortal Kombat 12, it is the 12th release, was coming. Warner Brothers leaked it basically in a press conference months ago. I don't know if we ever discussed it, but they basically were like talking about financials, and then at some point they were like, and Mortal Kombat's later this year, so that's going to be good too. And Ed Boon had a lot of fun with that, obviously. He's been tweeting and teasing ever since. So we knew the game was coming. It's interesting and makes sense what they're going with the name Mortal Kombat 1, because it is obviously a successor to, and canon, it is next after Mortal Kombat 11, but it's obviously this what quote-unquote spoils Mortal Kombat 11's ending in Liu Kang becoming a god. He's now creating a new timeline for peace. But obviously Mortal Kombat is all about fighting, so there's obviously no peace in this new timeline, which is the second time they've done this. This is what happened with Mortal Kombat 9. If you remember, Raiden sends a message back in time, creates a different timeline, which we got Mortal Kombat X, and Mortal Kombat 11. So here's another timeline, sort of with Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat 11 being the god. But everything we've seen is really good. I know we've only seen the cinematics. I thought we were maybe going to see this at the PlayStation Showcase, but I guess they've almost confirmed that we're seeing this at the Summer Games Fest, Jeff Keighley's thing. But more or less we know it's more Mortal Kombat. I'm pretty much a big fan of this. I don't play it as hardcore as before. I'm, I guess, more casual. I kind of just like the characters, the stories. Kind of a fan of the leaked Fighter Pass. That's kind of, Amazon leaked what the first year Fighter Pass will be. Some interesting choices there, but I think it's pretty fun. Jabbar, I know you're a little bit even more of a casual Mortal Kombat fan. What did you think of the reveal?
Yeah. I like Mortal Kombat a lot, but it's not one that I've dived super deep into in a long time. But yeah, no, I was very intrigued by this one. First off, thank you for explaining the lore behind this, because I won't ever pretend to understand the Mortal Kombat mythos whatsoever. It's been a long time since I've been I think I understood it up until about 4, and then I think that was about the line where I've stopped kind of hard paying attention to what was happening. So yeah, no, that explains a lot of things, because I thought there was a reboot semi-recently in terms of 10 and 11 I thought were kind of like a new thing, and then a reboot again was very interesting. But no, it was kind of exciting to kind of see a classic iterations of characters kind of back in the new style. So I'm very excited to jump into it. I love how soon it is. I mean, September 19th. So that's going to be fun. It's also really cool to see a new Street Fighter and a new Mortal Kombat launch in the same year. That's really fun. So that's going to be a fun amount of stuff to play. So the fighting game fans are eating good right now. But yeah, no, I'm pretty excited about this overall, even though I don't fully understand from a narrative perspective what they're 100% doing. Because, so, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is like a soft reboot because everything previous to it is still canon. It's kind of just a bit of a reset. Am I understanding correctly? Similarly, like to comics or something like that.
Correct. Think of, I mean, obviously we're talking Warner Bros. And other rooms. Think of DC World. So everything that Mortal Kombat led up to, then there was a game which was called just Mortal Kombat, which was the PS3 361. That's the one that had, like on PlayStation had Kratos in it.
Yeah.
There's that one. So that game starts with the ending of the previous Mortal Kombat game, which I believe was Armageddon.
Yes. I remember what you're talking about, yeah.
Raiden sends a message to himself back in time and causes a chain of events. And that Mortal Kombat game basically redos 1, 2, and 3. Different timeline, obviously. Then you get that game, which now everyone calls it Mortal Kombat 9, but again, it's just called Mortal Kombat technically.
Gotcha.
Then we had Mortal Kombat X, which was the sequel. Mortal Kombat 11, which was the sequel. And at the end of 11... And it's this is where I kind of don't like it. It's only if you played the DLC that you get this ending. But there was this aftermath ending, I think they called it, where Liu Kang becomes a god of... They call him the fire god, but he's like fire, lightning, and technically time.
Okay.
He becomes a god. And in that universe, it seemed like they were going to continue with the next storyline, which would be a technical remake of Shaolin Monks, that old PS2 game.
Oh, okay.
Instead of that, it looks like that Liu Kang, so Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat 11, the god now, is creating a new universe, which is this new universe now that you're going to. It's technically an alternate timeline, but with the god from Mortal Kombat 11 controlling it. So it's his new universe that he's making. Got
it. So yeah, so they haven't had to fully like retcon anything previously. So it's kind of like a rebirth. It's like a Flashpoint type thing. Okay, I got you.
Basically, yep.
Interesting. All right.
Think of 2 Flashpoint sections, and that's how we're continuing with the timeline, which is why they called it 1, because it's this new. That
is the only thing that I think is a misstep. I think that's kind of a goofy name to say the 1, because again, we have Mortal Kombat. We technically also have another game called Mortal Kombat.
And now Mortal Kombat 1. So you have 3 Mortal Kombat 1s.
Yeah, that I wouldn't have done, because I think to some extent you can have like there's technically 2 God of Wars, but there's God of War 2018, and they make that distinction with the year. I think the year designation is sufficient, but yeah, again, or even something like Mortal Kombat Rebirth or something like that. I think could make more sense.
I think you could have just called it Mortal Kombat 12 and still go on with this plot line.
Yeah, 12 would probably be the most sensible. I don't think people have an aversion to high numbers for that franchise. But
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's the only thing based on what I saw that I thought was goofy. The name is just ridiculous. But everything else looked great, and I'm excited to. I want to see some gameplay though. I want to see how it runs. Yeah, I like the way 11 played. Generally, I won't lie, I'm more of an Injustice guy, so like I'm still waiting on that Injustice 3. So for me, I was watching this and I was like, oh, this looks great. Okay, but like let's finish this one so we can get Injustice 3, please. No, the game looks great based on what cinematics they showed in terms of like character design. I want to see some gameplay. I want to see how it runs. Because I want to see if there's any difference. Like, is this just Mortal Kombat 11 with reset characters and a new lore? Because Mortal Kombat 11 wasn't that long ago. It was like, what, 2019 or something
2019?
Like that? So it's been a couple years.
Technically, the pattern's been usually, since Mortal Kombat 9, they usually do an Injustice game, then a Mortal Kombat, then an Injustice game, and a Mortal Kombat. So this year should have been Injustice 3.
And we got back-to-back Mortal Kombats.
Mortal Kombat, so we're not sure.
That's interesting.
I know Injustice games don't seem to sell very well.
Probably not.
Like
Probably
Mortal
not.
Kombat, which I'm assuming if they would have sold well, I'm assuming we would have gotten Injustice 3. But before we move on, have you seen the leaked fighter pass?
Yeah. Are we gonna talk about? Well, I think I did. Are we talking about who it is?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, we won't. I just in the word that someone wants to be excited for it. Just because I'm almost 100%. 2 of the names were leaked way before the game was even leaked. Due to a copyright claim. But then the listing's been removed. So
if you see it again, send me what you saw so I can make sure I've seen what you've seen. Because I've seen one guy, but I haven't seen beyond that.
No, it's like a list of 5. 3 of them are random Mortal Kombat characters. There's 3 3 special guest characters, which has become a new thing in Mortal Kombat.
Got you. Yeah. Send that over if you see anything. But
yeah. After the show, I'll text you the three that I think you'll care about.
Got you. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Mortal Kombat 1. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll be playing that sooner rather than later. We're heading into summer right now, so it's only going to be a couple months for that. But the next story is actually a big one, and it's something that I actually am glad we got information on, because it's the thing that I immediately noticed about the last PlayStation showcase, which was PlayStation fans noticed one major omission from this week's PlayStation showcase. That was the in-development multiplayer game from Naughty Dog in the Last of Us universe, what is, I guess, being called Factions 2, effectively. In a statement posted to Twitter, the studio didn't say that the Last of Us multiplayer game was indefinitely delayed, but nor did it say when or if this idea may come to PlayStation. As development has continued, we've realized what is best for the game is to give it more time, the studio, Naughty Dog, said. According to the report from Bloomberg, which hit alongside Naughty Dog's statement and appears to have prompted its publication, the team working on the Last of Us multiplayer spin-off has been scaled back after a recent evaluation, and that many of its developers have moved on to other projects. That is not great news for people who are very excited about this project. So it seems like at some point it was kind of like reassessed, took a look at, and they scaled it back. Based on what they saw, maybe is not that impressive, and they don't feel like it's a effective use of resources and time for the team, which is really interesting. As anybody who knows, Naughty Dog very likely has several projects in development. One is definitely a new IP. One you can maybe imagine is maybe the early steps of the Last of Us successor, whatever that is, Last of Us 3. And then in the background, we know that they were making this multiplayer game that was supposed to, I believe, originally come out around 2, but has since kind of fell into development hell. But it seems like, Factions is not doing so well, thus why it wasn't in the PlayStation Showcase. This was actually a game that I was really curious about. I am not a multiplayer guy, but I love Last of Us, and I have faith in Sony first party to put out a solid multiplayer game that I think could make it intriguing. Because if you give me anything remotely close to like Last of Us meets The Division, maybe like a multiplayer effect in that world, because I don't want to do no battle royale thing, but if they do it in that way, I think that could be amazing. So from that perspective, I'm a little bit disappointed in that, and I hope this sees the light of day, but it's entirely possible it doesn't. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's always been an interesting thing, right, with Factions 2. That's what we're all going to be calling it, until we get an official name, if we get an official name now. Because though it wasn't really ever shown for the first Last of Us, having Factions in it, it found its community, and Factions, and I remember trying Factions a little bit, and was super impressed with it. I was like, wow, this is like a full-fledged multiplayer experience. Now again, I didn't get super into it, but I could see, I'm like, oh, when Last of Us 2 started being talked about and revealed, we're like, I can only imagine where this new multiplayer section. And then they announced, I think like a year before the game came out, how it wasn't going to launch with Part 2. So we assumed maybe free update, very much like Ghost of Tsushima did. Fantastic multiplayer thing.
That was really good,
free and added to the game. So we thought that. Then we saw, every year went by, we still didn't get any new factions, and now we're like, okay, they talk about how it's being its own thing. I assumed the way a lot of people discussed it was going to be right, where it's going to be its own $60, maybe $70, full-fledged, like you said, it's the best way to describe it, like a sort of Division version of The Last of Us, where it's going to have some story beats, obviously not with the main crew. And that seemed like it was going to go work. When I saw the PlayStation Showcase, and obviously we're going to discuss that right after this, and I was like, my big thing was, and I had a bet with a friend, I was like, it either starts with Spider-Man or Factions 2, or it ends with either Spider-Man or Factions. Spider-Man or Last of Us, one of them is going to start it, one of them is going to end it.
I thought the same thing.
It just seemed too obvious, and I was sort of right on one end, but Last of Us not being there immediately, even before the rumors and before Bloomberg or anything, I said something's up with that game. I said something's up with Factions 2. I mean, we finally see Helldivers 2. Not to spoil what we're getting into, but we saw Helldivers 2, but we're not going to see Faction 2 yet. So I had that sort of, but when I start seeing, especially now with Sony talking about how they basically have a whole division set to look after and curate these live service games, and this would obviously would be one of these live service games. And there's that other, it's not sort of a non-story where they said that Sony's having a lot of people from Bungie check out a lot of these live service games and kind of giving them a thumbs up, thumbs down. Did that play a part? Did what they were doing for factions not up to par? Is it kind of falling apart? Is this something that Naughty Dog wants to do? Naughty Dog tells these very step-by-step long stories. Do they not really know, is the team... Naughty Dog's very different from the Naughty Dog in 2013 that released The Last of Us, and who was on board to make that multiplayer section. We see that they shifted, and then they did part 1, and then it's just so much going on over there. Like you said, there's obviously got to be a new section of the teams. Obviously, I think is doing part 3. One of them, a small section, was supposed to be doing this game, and then there's obviously a new IP working. So maybe they couldn't juggle all 3, and the quality started to just not hit those goalposts. And Sony's at this point, especially when you're talking about The Last of Us and Naughty Dog, where you can't release an okay to good Last of Us game, regardless if it's multiplayer, single player, whatever. You can't do that. They want Last of Us to be these huge, big explosions, especially with the success of the games and the HBO show, and obviously the season 2 of the HBO show going along. So it sucks because I was curious on what they were kind of building there, and I do hope we see it. I think the fact that nothing showed up here, I mean, Last of Us was what, 2020, 2019, 2020?
2020, yeah.
So
2019. You're right.
Yeah, so you assume Factions was in production alongside before the game released, so 4 years, and we still have nothing to show. We've seen nothing. I think we saw an artwork of like a guy standing on a building like 2 years ago, if I'm not wrong. So it's scary. It's scary to see that. I think it could be so many things. The pressure that Sony might be putting on Naughty Dog to produce something crazy, especially when you have all these live service sort of things on the burner within Sony. And then you have one of the biggest live service guys now, Bungie, under that umbrella, and maybe their expertise starts, coming at them a little bit. Who knows? But I just hope. I don't know. There's rumors, and I've seen people do some estimations where it may be canceled. It may be completely scrapped, which would suck because that's a lot of years and a lot of money down the drain. Do you just kind of put it on hold and wait for The Last of Us Part 3 and re-release it there? Who knows? But it's... The second I saw that it wasn't at the showcase, I did have that sort of gut feeling. I was like, something's up. And it's kind of sad to see because there's probably a lot of good stuff there and a lot of things that people worked hard on. So it is unfortunate.
Yeah, totally. And, I work in tech, obviously a different sector of tech, but a similar industry to the game industry in some ways, that there are like some parallels. And so I'm pretty familiar with the concept of like projects being deprioritized. And a lot of the time there's this idea of like key milestones. We have this kind of initial ambition that you kind of set up, and you have the project details kind of laid out up front. And then there are kind of key milestones you need to hit. And from the game industry, I would imagine that a lot of that has to do with like playability from front to back, performance, and how much is encapsulated in the that was kind of mapped out initially, and how much is that actually captured in the end product. And my guess is that, when they say kind of scaled back after a recent evaluation, is they either missed a milestone or they were unable to capture the ambition that initially was kind of spelled out in the initial documents, maybe kind of mapping out what Factions 2 was going to be. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like they presented what they had at some point, and probably internally, this deprioritization doesn't necessarily mean that like Sony looked at it and was like, nah, but it's entirely possible that, internally higher ups and stakeholders over in Naughty Dog itself kind of took a look at it and were like, no, this is not meeting maybe our bar of quality, because from what I understand, the people who literally made Last of Us 1 and 2 are not working on Factions. It's kind of like its own little team. And so maybe they presented it and they were just like, nah, like this is not going to meet our standard of quality. So they're scaling it back because they probably had a lot of people on it and they're probably like, all right, we could use these people better elsewhere. And maybe they're just, if it doesn't get outright canceled, maybe they're just lowering the scope of it. And they're like, okay, we're going to have a smaller experience fundamentally than maybe we initially, because they're probably, the logic is like, okay, if we, as controversial as maybe Last of Us 2 is, right now, generally speaking, in terms of quality level, Last of Us 1, 2, and the show have all hit this really high bar. And maybe their logic is like, we'd rather meet the internal expectations we have and make it a smaller project that fulfills what it's trying to do, albeit maybe a lot smaller, than have something way more ambitious that just doesn't meet it. And not only misses the mark from an internal quality standpoint, but maybe also is going to disappoint the people. The small experience might disappoint the people, but at the very least, maybe it'll achieve what it set out to do. But if it's a more ambitious experience and they can't hit that and they can't fulfill that and then they drop it, now suddenly you have something with that Last of Us moniker on it that maybe has more significant issues. Thus why they haven't shown anything gameplay related, anything. They showed one piece of concept art or something, one or two pieces of concept art. So that means, they don't have much to show probably in terms of something that I think maybe captures the experience that they've wanted to translate to people. So that's just me kind of coming from the tech perspective of what I think might be happening. It's speculative, but I'm kind of reading between the lines, and that's what it sounds like. Because again, this is not screaming to me just yet vaporware, like this is done, this is gone. This is screaming to me deprioritization, like they're shuffling some people around because something's not right. Which means, I mean, this can resurface one day, because again, this has happened before. I mean, look at Metroid Prime 4. I mean, that is a prime example of a seriously deprioritized game, and it was deprioritized to the point where they were like, okay, deprioritize it, reshuffle, and change teams. You know what I mean? That is a prime example of what can happen if like major heads roll. And so for now, I'm kind of tempering my expectations and kind of waiting and seeing, because again, this can mean a lot of things. They haven't said too much. They're being vague, which makes sense because again, this is a game that we don't know much about. So why disclose more than you need to, I guess. The Naughty Dog is not known for being particularly expressive developers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is. And it's something we'll have to, keep an ear out for, because Naughty Dog has been pretty quiet. I know they released Last of Us Part 1 last year, but still, they've been pretty quiet. A lot of the Sony first parties have been pretty quiet.
Absolutely.
But this is something that comes up every time we think there's a state of play or something in their showcase. We're like, all right, factions got to be there. And now I'm not going to be asking for factions anymore, because I feel like I'd rather be surprised and it show up in a great state one day than keep asking for it and something's just sort of spit out, or it gets canceled and dreams crushed.
Yeah, at least we heard something. I mean, for up until now, and in some ways it still is in the limbo that it was kind of occupying before, but I think it was one of those things where it's like, okay, we haven't heard anything in a while. Is something wrong? So now we at least got the answer. Yes, something is wrong. So
something is wrong.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, they just are not saying anything and not showing anything for years. Kind of like maybe what you see on the Microsoft side. No, we got a concrete answer. Yep, something seems to be wrong, and they're addressing it. And what the end result of that is, that's the question now, is what the end result is, and when do we find out? Like, do they pull the plug earlier, or is this something that maybe resurfaces years from now? I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, and hopefully it comes back one day stronger than ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to the last story, which is a big part, and obviously we've already sort of talked around it a little bit, but we got the first major look at PlayStation upcoming slate of games for the 2023 showcase. It's the first time we've had a showcase in I think 2 years, of what was supposed to be a really, really big scale showcase. Not the state they've done multiple state of plays, but this is the big showcase. And we've got a couple of things announced, so we'll also go over some of these. Some of them were pretty big. Some of them were obvious. Some of them were kind of leaked for a while. But so let's talk about some of them, what was announced. So one big one, which is, again, this has been rumored at like every showcase / state of play for a little while now. But it's finally real. The Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, or Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, finally real. Again, we obviously saw just a little cinematic CG trailer. I almost didn't believe it because Snake Eater, though I like that game a lot, Metal Gear Solid 3, it's, I think, overhyped in many ways. But it was super cool to see. I was more excited that, one, Konami was here at the showcase in a form with the big one, with a big deal, because they've been so quiet for a long time, and we all knew what happened with Kojima Productions. But yeah, sure enough, we have a Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater remake coming out, and then they also announced in a quick sort of blurb, and they've been trickling information since, we are getting a Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1, which as of right now, it's confirmed to have the original Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. And I think 3 Snake Eater brings the original Metal Gear 1 and 2 games. That's how it's always been.
Okay.
Yeah, because if they announced it, but it's like really weird because I think it's Metal Gear Solid 3 Substance Edition or whatever brings the original 2 Metal Gear games. So, but they are calling it Metal Gear Master Collection 1, which is interesting. Because I've played and beaten every Metal Gear game except 4. Just the game is basically unplayable on PS3 right now. So if they were finally able to rip that off of the PS3 and get it on a new gen console, it'll be great. But I know this is a big one. What did you think of the Metal Gear reveal?
Yeah, no, I was really, really excited about this. This is probably one of the things I was probably a little bit more excited about. I love Metal Gear, but the inaccessibility of it has been pretty frustrating. And so the bare minimum, thank you for that collection. Like, thankfully, they're dropping it to amount of consoles. Because, again, the last, I think, collection we got was back in the PS3, which can kind of be a pain to find. Like, sometimes it pops up for decent prices, and then other times it doesn't, depending on how many people care about Metal Gear Solid at a given point. But yeah, Snake Eater Delta, really awesome. I love Metal Gear Solid 3. I think it was like a time and place thing. I think starting to get a little older, and I really appreciated some of the survival mechanics of 3 at that time. But that's one of the only ones I've never returned to. I played 4 a couple times. And I played the first 2 a million times, and then 5 I dabbled with. 3 is the weird zone where I played it as a kid, loved it, and then never really returned to it, and just never got around to it. So I'm really excited to be able to play a remake of that. Funnily enough, I actually was somehow able to guess it from the cinematic when I saw the animals eating each other. I don't know how. I was just like, I think this is Metal Gear.
Instinctively, I don't know what it was when I saw it. When I saw the alligator and the snake, I think, or whatever, start fighting and biting, I was like, this is Snake Eater.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was like, if it's Metal Gear, it has to be 3, obviously, because the other ones don't even have this aesthetic. But yeah, no, I was really hyped to see that, and I'm really excited to jump into that collection. I'm curious what amenities they're gonna have in these collections. Like Konami, I think has actually done a really good job with their collection so far. Yeah. So as somebody who's love the Castlevania collections. And so I'm excited to see kind of what is included in these. Is there any kind of visual upgrade? Again, not expecting a new filter or anything like that, but are we going to have 1080p as much rendered as possible? I'm really excited to jump into 2. I'm a little concerned about the playability of those. It's been a long time, and they are that first clunky, to say the least. Each one gets a little better than the previous one, of course, but they are pretty stiff, and pretty much until you get to 5, pretty much, actually. Yeah. So from that perspective, really excited. Definitely going to play these, no doubt about that. And I'm just curious about timeline when these are going to hit.
Yeah, that's what's curious for me too. And I assume this is the start, because they're calling it Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. I'm assuming this is the sort of new line they're going to do with the remakes. Delta, and I guess they're going chronologically. Snake Eater is the first one in the timeline, so the next one would be Delta. Well, I guess the first Metal Gear doesn't have a name, so I don't know what they would call it unless they bring the Twin Snakes name back. That'd be pretty interesting.
Well, yeah. If you're talking solid remakes, then yeah, they would. Oh, and so So you think they're gonna remake more?
I think if this one does well, why wouldn't you? Especially since you started with the one that I know there's a bunch of PSP spin-offs, but if you think they're gonna do the main ones, so Delta, Delta Snake Eater, Delta Twin Snakes, and then Delta Sons of Liberty, would be interesting to see. I think why even give it a Delta name if it's just a remake? But who knows? That's just my tinfoil hat theory. That's what I guess is a theory and a hope, because that's would be pretty cool.
I like it though. I like that thinking. I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
I thought, because I just thought that like Delta is just a way to distinguish it from 3. That's what I originally think. But no, that's actually an interesting thing if they keep that line going. And going chronologically is very interesting, because these are one of the typically I'm a release order guy typically. But Metal Gear, I think, has a strong argument for chronological, especially the way they kind of present things and set things up. That I think you could absolutely start with 3 and move your way onwards, and it make a ton of sense. Exactly. The way it sets so much up for, because when you play the original Metal Gear Solid, not to go on too much of a tangent, but when you play the original Metal Gear Solid, from a narrative perspective, you really do feel like you're being dropped into the middle of an existing thing, at the time, obviously it was a long time ago, so I don't have like perfect memories of it, but I remember the idea being like, I was hearing from other people at that time that it's like you're being dropped into an existing story because there was 2 more Metal Gear games before it, and then they're alluding to the NES ones. And then it wasn't until you play the 3rd one that's like, actually there are things that were happening even outside the context of those 2 games. Forget those things. That is, I think the previous 2 ones kind of set up like Shadow Moses, if anything. But in terms of like the bigger things with like Big Boss and all that, like that happens outside the game. So starting with 3, I think absolutely makes a lot of sense, and I would love for them to remake the other ones. Especially 2 is the one that I want to go back to. But it's just some of those effects I would love to see like remade in proper like visuals, like just the rain effects from it. It's just there's incredible things about this franchise that I look forward to, and it's a shame that Kojima can't have anything to do with these. That's a real shame, because I think he, if anything, would love, like, if imagine a proper remake, or if anything, a reimagining done by Kojima where he could actually have another crack at his own franchise, I think could be even greater. But at this point, as Metal Gear fans, you take what you can get, so I'm happy.
Same. So the next thing we'll talk about, it's something we talked about. I think pretty sure we talked about it here.
Yeah, we did.
We did, right? This is the Sony Remote Play handheld, and they unveiled it. They still are calling it by its internal project name, Project Q, and it weirdly enough, it looks like a small, nice little tablet with the DualSense.
Yep.
Pasted on each end, and it looks pretty interesting. It looks pretty much what we assumed it looked like. I think from the early copyrights and everything, this is what we thought it would look like. They again did not discuss any pricing, and that's the big one for me, because how much, you can't be charging me too much if it's a strict streaming thing. But it's been something I thought about more and more now that I'm, I dusted off my Switch to play Zelda. There's something nice about playing Zelda in my living room, just picking up the whole the whole Switch and doing another hour laying in bed. It'd be interesting to do that with certain PlayStation 5 games. We think if we're playing Spider-Man and you want to do some collectible missions, what's the harm in laying in bed and doing it there? So it'd be pretty nice. It looks interesting. Just again, price is the big one. No pricing, no dates. It was kind of a weird sort of just announcement they had there. And they also showed some new PlayStation 5 earbuds, which looked kind of cool, but I don't really play my PlayStation 5 with like headset or earbuds in. But
so you're a TV audio guy.
It depends. It depends what kind of game I'm playing. I don't know. Maybe earbuds would convince me just to pop them in there, but I usually just play it through the TV. Yeah.
Got you.
But what'd you think of Project Q?
Yeah, so actually one thing, generally speaking, it looks comfortable. I like the fact that it looks kind of ridiculous as like a split controller, but I have no doubt that it's probably really comfortable. Especially considering the fact that I've been playing a lot more handheld games lately, with having more to play on Switch. That's allowed me to play that, and then I kind of like jump into Steam Deck kind of regularly all the time anyways, to play like Dead Cells and stuff like that. And yeah, man, like that kind of, this one probably looks like it's probably going to be the most comfortable of them all because it's literally a controller. And so from that perspective, I like what I see. The price is a huge one for me. And it's one of those things where like I am kind of already sold on it, but it's those weird things where it's like I am absolutely the person that I think they're pushing this for. It's a tech enthusiast who loves the PlayStation ecosystem, who kind of gets a little bit of everything, who is not playing handheld up and about, like moving around in cars, stuff like that. One thing, I can't even play in cars if I wanted to. I get insane motion sickness. We've talked about this before. But yeah, I get insane vertigo. So I can't really play up and about like that in vehicles and stuff like that. So for the most part, I just play at home. And I share a TV with my girl, and she also games. So it's one of those things where she'll be playing PS5 and I'll be playing Switch. And then we'll swap, but we have that TV. So if I could have the flexibility of her playing like docked Switch, and I can essentially undock my PS5, that's what it fills for me personally. But I don't know if that's a use case that, like when people see the Project Q, and I've heard this from several people and be like, I don't get who, like, this doesn't make sense. It's a handheld that you can't really take up and about. That because again it requires that Wi-Fi. That's kind of stupid. I absolutely understand that critique because again my use case is not, I don't think it's even most gamers. It's a very specific gamer who effectively wants to undock their PS5 at home, and so that works perfectly for me. I have no doubt that I'm going to play the hell out of this, and I'll probably play most things this way if the tech works, because there's so many games that I'd love to play on PS5 that I just, the time sink of it, like I just not trying to sit there staring at a TV playing some of these type of games, but if I could play them, especially all these PlayStation Now games, these PS3 games that I want to go back to, but I'm not just trying to sit there and take up the TV to play like God of War 2. This is perfect for that. And so yeah, I'm absolutely sold on this, but again the price is going to make a huge differential for me because there is a price that it could charge that I wouldn't get it for. So if this is going into like the 300 range, I'm not getting it. I just don't think it's that great of a value proposition for me. But if we can keep it in the, especially to 1 to 200 range, I'm on it. Absolutely. The PlayStation 5 earbuds, I do play with headphones on a lot. Not all the time, but a lot. I mostly play out loud when I'm playing like Switch because there's no headphone slot in the Pro controller. But I do play with headphones quite a bit. I like the immersive audio thing. I kind of like just locking in on my games. But I don't need additional earbuds. Though I think it's really interesting that these are actually designed very similarly. Obviously, it has the PlayStation 5 aesthetic, but it has the functionality very similarly to AirPods with its little containment case. Yeah. I think that's actually really interesting. So yeah, no, they look cool. I love that I love how unified the aesthetic of this generation is. That everything kind of looks the same, and not in a corny uniform way, but like everything matches very nicely. VR2 looks great in conjunction to the PS5, which looks like the DualSense, and DualSense looks like the earbuds, and now the Project Q is going to fit right into it. It all looks great, but definitely not for me. I'm cool on that. I already have headphones. I have these Bose over-the-ear headphones and AirPods. I'm cool.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we got another look and finally a release date for October for Assassin's Creed Mirage. Obviously, a game that I know you and I are both kind of really looking forward to. To continue on our little Assassin's Creed thing. A big throwback. It always keeps throwing back to those early Assassin's Creed games. So I'm hoping no one's expecting these huge, giant worlds that we got in the last trilogy. So Mirage it's probably gonna be a nice little standalone game. I'm excited. I know that's most likely a day one for me. I know probably for you as well.
Oh yeah.
You excited for Mirage?
Oh yeah, this is the most excited I've been for a while. And again, this is coming from somebody, I like the new Assassin's Creed games. I played all of those. I like them, but like they are a massive departure from what it was, and I don't like these in place of the old ones. I love the idea of them being able to basically do two types of Assassin's Creed games, and this being the first of that kind of throwback vibe, I think is excellent. I love the fact that they've only shown one city, one sprawling, deep city. I love that, especially going back, and that's the thing is I love the setting of like this reminds me obviously a lot of Assassin's Creed 1 specifically.
Obviously.
Yeah, and this evokes all that same imagery and stuff like that. The only problem is that game is that it is clunky as hell. And so being able, if they could just make Assassin's Creed basically two Brotherhood, that era, that vibe, the storytelling, the collectibles, that kind of thing, just with the modern gameplay, that I'm absolutely sold with it. Because that's the thing I love about the new games is the controls are never what makes them challenging. It's the situations they put you into. But the problem playing I don't know if you remember, I did a replay of all the Assassin's Creed games.
You did? Yep.
And those first three, I would say, three mainline ones, half the challenge is just controlling the frickin' character and getting them trying to do what I'm trying to do. And I would like to run. Why am I climbing a wall right now? Why am I on top of this random stand? And these soldiers are trying to kill me because I accidentally touched the wall a certain way. Like, those are the small things that I'm like, okay, now that those things are gone and we can have some of the same imagery, the same self-contained nature, because that's what I love about, especially too. Yeah, you have like several different areas, but you have these sprawling cities with depth to them. It's worth exploring. Where Valhalla and Odyssey, it's so massive that like exploration, like a lot of it's empty, to be honest with you. It's space for the sake of space. So I love the idea of like a more trimmed down experience, even if it's only a $10-15 experience with a single city with a bunch of stuff to do in it. And, it's just a normal Assassin's Creed game. I think that's awesome. So, I love the October release date. I love that. It gives a little breathing room to some of the other games that we have coming. And, yeah, no, I'm absolutely sold on it.
Yeah, super, super exciting. Coming up also in October, the long-awaited Alan Wake 2.
Yes.
I know that's a big thing. I've confessed I know about Alan Wake. I've never really played through the whole Alan Wake game. But it's one of those things where I watched a lot of people play, and then I watched a straight-up playthrough of it. At the time, because of how long it was locked to 360. And I know it's ported to the new consoles, and I do plan on playing it. But Alan Wake 2 looks really good. It's got that big sort of almost horror feel to it. Everything I saw looked really cool. It is something exciting. Alan Wake is that game that I want to beat. I do want to play that game soon-ish. I don't know when, because we got some big ones coming up, but that is one of those games where next time I have a small break, I do want to get through it. How are you feeling on Alan Wake 2?
Yeah, I'm almost in the exact same boat as you. I'm curious about it. I've wanted to play it for a bit. I didn't play it when it came out because I didn't have a 360. And I don't know much about it. Like, I've seen it there a bunch, and I know Alan Wake 2 is coming, and Alan Wake 2 looks awesome. But yeah, I've never played the first one. I don't really know anything about it. So it's something I absolutely want to check out. I'll play it on Xbox because it has backwards compatibility. Maybe, I don't know if it's on Game Pass, so if anything, I'll just pick up a cheap disc. 360 games are like really cheap. So I'll find a copy somewhere. But no, I'm really curious about it, but it's not something I can speak to.
They did do the Alan Wake remastered.
Oh, did they? Didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, so I don't even have to download the one. Perfect.
And I happen to be looking at it right now. It's actually on sale for $11.99
on
PSN.
I'm in that.
So I might snag that there.
Oh, yeah.
$11.99 for that remake, and just have it on deck when I'm ready.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely getting that.
But a quick thing to say about this came out afterwards. I don't know if you saw it. But I don't know if it was the main game director or whatever. Alan Wake 2 is a only digital game. There will not be a physical release.
Oh, that really?
They said I forgot the exact quote. Basically, to try to keep budgets down and this, that, the third.
The beginning of the end.
There's not going to be a physical for it. And I was like, interesting. And I meant to send it to you when it came up. But it is an interesting take that, Alan Wake 2, wherever you're going to get it, it has to be digital. Unless, of course, they strike some deal with like Limited Run, who takes the printing cost out. Again, that's not on them, but it is just a little forewarning out there. That's why when I saw that, I was like, I'll just get Alan Wake 1 digital too. So.
Steve, it's happening. It's happening. It's the moment. It's because it was always those small indies, the tiny little things. All it takes is one big boy to be like, we're not going to do that this year. All it takes is 1 year Madden to not do it, and it's over. It's done.
Yeah.
All it takes is one game to release digitally only and to sell great, and it's over for us. The physical game is done. Oh man, but no, that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's gonna. Yeah, it was a fun thing to see to keep note of.
Yeah.
Next up was a Final Fantasy 16 trailer. I watched it a little bit. I was kind of like checking my phone at the time just because I don't need to see any more Final Fantasy 16. I don't have much else to say. You gave us that big state of play over it, so I'm not sure why. I mean, I know why it was I know why it was here, but just to give us the launch trailer. The game still looks great. I don't have much more else to say about it till I get my hands on it. Anything to say over Final Fantasy 16?
I watched the showcase maybe an hour after it aired, so I was able to like not watch it in real time. So I fast forwarded through this. Because I've seen it so many times. The game looks beautiful, amazing. I can't wait to play it. That's enough. Like I don't want to see it anymore. Anymore now we're like I think I already know too much about the story. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, leak the script then. If this is what we're doing, like how much you gonna show me, Jesus. But yeah, no, it looks great. But no, I don't want to see no more.
Exactly. The game comes out in 3 weeks. I was like, I can wait. I don't need to see anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, Capcom was there, was showing us Dragon's Dogma 2, a new trailer, which was interesting because I thought this game was maybe not as far in development. If you remember, I think they announced this. Wasn't the game director just wearing a T-shirt that said Dragon's Dogma 2 or something like that? So I tried Dragon's Dogma 1. I liked it. I just had a lot of early Skyrim vibes, so I didn't play it too much. I think it's still installed on my Steam Deck. I don't know, and I don't assume that this is going to be highly connected to it, but it's one of those games like when I know when I eventually do get into it, it'll be nice that I'll have Dragon's Dogma, and by the time I do go through that, Dogma 2 will be out. Any feelings towards Dragon's Dogma?
Dogma's a tough one for me because it occupies a lane that I think is very heavy for me. There are so many games in this field. The Skyrims, the Witchers, the Kingdoms of Amalur, the Fables. There's just so many of those type of games. Dragon Age. That I have no space in my psyche for Dragon's Dogma. I played the first one before. It was fine. I liked it. But I was like, I can only do so many third-person like action fantasy games before I'm just like, all right, like it's just I'm glad I know this like Dragon's Dogma absolutely has like a massive fan base, so I have no doubt that people are like super psyched about this, but like I can't. As considering that that's not like my favorite genre, I only have the stomach for so much, so I'm cool on this one.
Yeah, no. And a surprise one. I was at least surprised. So Bungie has a new, sort of a new game, but you know they announced a new Marathon game, which is pretty exciting because I've only ever played the original Marathon. I never played the other two Marathon games, just because they're like super hard to even access right now. But we're not sure if it's a reboot or whatever. But yeah, we got Bungie coming out with a new Marathon game, and so, small fun fact, though it was at the PlayStation Showcase, and I know a lot of these games were, but Bungie being, first party now, is also coming to Xbox and PC, so that is interesting. Are you a fan of Bungie's original Marathon games?
No, I wasn't really familiar with it until they announced this one, and I kind of did my homework on the back end about it. Yeah, it wasn't something I was familiar with, never played it. I love Bungie. I'm always very fascinated with what they do, even if I don't play a ton of their games. You know what I mean? Obviously, I played Halo back in the day. Destiny has never really been my thing, but I've always had a tremendous respect for it. I love the amount of care they put into they've reinvented what it means to be, I think, a multiplayer shooter. And so I'm super excited to see what they do with Marathon. The aesthetic is super interesting. I love the way that the colors are playing, like you have these neon colors kind of playing off of these really bleak environments. I think it's just really interesting. So I'm definitely down to try it out, and I would love to see more information. But yeah, no, it's also really interesting that like it's a lot of people think that it is kind of like the start of a new franchise when it's actually the first time they're kind of calling back to a much older one. So yeah, no, that's really, really interesting, and I'm curious to see if this kind of leads to a larger effort to kind of bring this franchise back, if anything. Are we going to see a Marathon, the original Marathon, ported into modern consoles? I'm curious. But yeah, no, I don't know too much about this one.
Yeah, I wasn't even sure if they still own the IP, because they're usually not. They still, if it's not Destiny, they're not really talking about it. So that was at least exciting to see. Because
from what I understand, Bungie's a newer company. It's like, yeah, I'm looking it up. It's like they're from 2016. So did they acquire this IP? Like, do they own this?
Bungie?
Oh, wait. How old is Bungie? They're not from 2016, but
No, Bungie is 90s. I want to say.
Oh
90s.
yeah, they were founded in 91. I didn't know that.
They
That's
worked.
interesting.
I think if I'm coming off the top of my head, these 3 games were Apple exclusives on Apple.
Yeah,
2
I'm seeing that.
or something like that, and they're very akin to like Doom games aesthetically, if you think about it.
See, you learn a new thing every day. I thought Halo was their first game. I swear on everything. I didn't know they did things before Halo.
They did. This is like a big thing they did before.
Interesting.
I think they did like 1 or 2 projects before Marathon, but Marathon is what put them on the.
Yeah, I'm checking it. Yeah, they have a number of things. Yeah. Oh, so they did a whole bunch of Pippin and classic Mac OS stuff. And
they were big Mac guys. That's why it was a big. Well, not to get into the history, but obviously Halo was originally a Mac game before Microsoft
very interesting.
purchased it and brought them over.
I've learned a whole bunch of new things about Bungie now. I'm gonna have to look into those. That's very interesting.
Yeah, look it up. It's an interesting story when you see like the original Halo running on Appleware. It's crazy. Next up after that, we saw a Street Fighter 6 story trailer, which was we kind of knew that already because of the demo. We saw that the story mode was going to be available. The big, because there was a big sort of dilemma with Street Fighter 5. The story mode came in like a year almost after the game launched. So being there day one, you create your character, you run around with the Street Fighter characters through Metro City. A couple cool cutscenes. I'm sure there'll be some cool animated scenes. I don't know how much of that story I will play because I think you have to play the story mode with your created character, and I assume the arcade mode will have the traditional fighting game story arcs. So we'll see how that rolls out and how well intertwined is it. Anything else to say on Street Fighter 6?
Not really. I'm probably going to stick to arcade personally as well. Again, unless I can choose a path with one of the existing characters and do the story mode that way, sure. But otherwise, I'll probably skip that.
Yep. We finally saw what Haven has been working on. So Haven has Fair Games, a new sort of it's hard to show because they didn't show too much that wasn't there, but I guess a competitive heist game, competitive multiplayer heist game, and we knew what they were working on was going to be probably one of these possible service games, live service games. And we didn't, not that I remember, we didn't see too much gameplay. I think we saw almost all CG stuff. But whatever Sony saw must have been good if we remember right, because unless I'm confusing the studios, Haven did get purchased by PlayStation after.
Yes, they did. That's the Jade Raymond team, I think.
The Jade Raymond, right? Yeah. So they announced the collaboration, and then we saw nothing, and then they announced they purchased them. Was any impressions on Fair Game? Or Fair? I guess Fair Games.
Yeah, Fair Games. I can totally see that Watch Dogs DNA in it.
That was my worry.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna be for me, but I cannot write it off until I see gameplay. So the concept of it, I'm not much of a heist guy. I don't really like it. I've never been into the GTA 5 heist side or the Payday stuff. It's not really my thing. But I'm gonna give it a shot. I mean, I'm curious about it. I don't, and don't call me a hater, but this whole neon game streamer aesthetic, the era that we're in right now, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it. I feel like it started a little bit with like Watch Dogs did it, and then we had like games like Far Cry New Dawn, and we're seeing a whole bunch of Rust 2 came out looking like that. This whole neon cool, I'm edgy, but I'm a gamer, and I have my marshmallow helmet that has LEDs on it. Like, I'm just not into that aesthetic. I don't like it. And so anything with that aesthetic, I kind of roll my eyes with, but I try not to be such a hater. So yeah, Fair Games might be good, but for right now, I'm kind of like, meh.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of that. There was that Ubisoft Battle Royale game.
Oh, yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
It had a lot. But I'm thinking, if they're smart with this game, I don't know how big of a game it's supposed to be, but if maybe they do a PlayStation Plus launch with it.
That would be smart. If it is perpetually online, for sure.
If it's perpetually online or anything like that, that'd be smart, because then we're going to download. I will download it to try it right away.
Absolutely.
At least. But yeah. It showed up the Talos Principle 2. I've never played the first Talos Principle, so I don't have too much to say. I know the game is held pretty high, but I don't know much else about it. I didn't know that there was a demand for the sequel. Are you familiar at all with this franchise?
No. Well, yeah, I'm familiar with the franchise in the way that I've seen it there on my screen constantly, but I've never collected. And I've just always...
the robot hands holding the cat.
Exactly. And I was fascinated by the aesthetic of the trailer. It looked really, really interesting. But I don't think the game is for me. So, it's one of the... I need to look into it because this one looks really good, but I need to know, do I need to play the first one? If I don't need to play the first one, I'll absolutely be willing to jump into this one. But if I need to play the old one, we'll see. So, but I don't have much else to say either because I haven't played it.
Yeah, I don't have much. I know there's some puzzle aspect to it, but who knows? The next one, one makes me laugh. Foam Stars, which was something. And I hate everyone said it. It's Square Enix Splatoon.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the best way to explain it. It looks like instead of painting everywhere, you're shooting foam everywhere. You get to do stylish things. It's got that Square Enix feel to it. I don't have much else to say. You can take it away if you want.
Literally, when I was watching this, my mouth was hanging open. I could not believe. Okay, you and I have paid attention to the game industry for damn near our whole lives, so we've seen ripoffs. We've seen people copy each other. You'll see things that are derivative. You could comment. You could say oh, PUBG came out and everybody copied them, and we've seen models work and then other teams try to adopt it. I don't know if I've ever in my life seen a ripoff on this scale in terms of foam start. You're covering a map in foam, but it's not paint, it's foam, so it's okay. And we have some generic anime chick. I was blown away. I was I cannot believe Square. This is something that you would absolutely expect on Steam somewhere, some random Chinese developer on Steam. You know what I mean? That might copy what Nintendo's doing or some other team's doing. You always see these little knockoffs and whatever, and that is what it is. From a major publisher, in a showcase for something this egregious is crazy. Again, I totally understand. Splatoon is killing it. It sells across the world, but from what I understand, it's even bigger than Asia. And so I totally understand other developers, other publishers, stakeholders looking at that. It's how can we do that? But I think the challenge of being a creative is okay, how can we put our own spin on this? This is what I guess you do when you don't put your own spin. You just take the game and then you change one thing to avoid being sued. That's what it looks like. Okay, you change it from paint to foam so we don't get sued, and you keep it, but everything other than that is almost identical. And obviously Nintendo has tons of other things with some of the aquatic creature imagery and the post-apocalyptic, whatever you want to call it, and all of that is missing in this one. So that all that leaves this with is just being Splatoon with none of what makes Splatoon interesting, I guess. And so I was blown away by it. I was super impressed by the ballsiness of them to just rip something off but with none of the charm. Shout out to them. That's incredible. I've never seen nothing like that in my life.
Yeah, it was wild. I was cracking up when I saw it because if you watch the first 15 seconds, everything looks kind of cool, right? You get the Square Enix and a neon sign, got this cool gun. I'm okay. Then I see, I think then they're walking out in a team, and I'm oh man, I said Overwatch. I was oh, it's some hero shooter, that's not gonna live long. And then get the girl with the pink hair comes down. I was okay. And then I see a 3-on-3 thing. Then I see the bubbles and foam, and I was oh no, it's okay.
It's crazy.
But it's a thing.
You almost got to respect it. You almost have to respect the willingness to just throw it all out. Forget creativity and individualism. Just nope, we're just taking their whole thing. We're just taking the whole thing. Respect. That's nuts.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy thing. It's one of those things that I couldn't believe it, but it exists.
Yeah, you're gonna play that.
Again, if it's one of these free things that's somewhere, I will try it.
Give it a good 20 minutes.
That's my thing. I'll give it a nice solid 20-minute try. Next up, something that I thought was a completely different game until I realized it wasn't what I was looking at. But yeah, Phantom Blade Zero, which, man, looked Super Sekiro Dark Souls.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Style. I thought this was some sort of Sekiro game. I also thought this was that other ninja game they keep showing, Last Ronin or something like that. They keep, which is not. Obviously, it's a different a different game, which bodes good and well. But it's, it looks like an awesome little action game. I do like a lot of what I see because I haven't really played a game like that probably since like Sekiro. Again, besides the Elden Ring, the From Software vibes to it. But who knows? How are you feeling about this? I'm just kind of mixed where I'm like, this is cool. I don't know if I will ever get to it just because of how busy I usually am.
Yeah, it looks amazing from what they've shown. My only challenge was I was having trouble how much of it was cinematic and what was there any gameplay? Because there was the speed of it. If that's the gameplay, I'm really impressed by that. I love how fast it is. And like I also love Sekiro, but I because of the prohibitive difficulty of it, I couldn't really get too far in it. But so like games like this, I'm super into. I love Neo and stuff like that. But the game looks incredible. But I think I need just more information because I was having trouble. Like there was points where I was like, okay, is this a cutscene? Or because there was a point where the way he was running against a wall was screaming to me like it was that was gameplay, but then there was a moment where how fast they were fighting. I'm like, there's no way that's too choreographed. That can't be just gameplay. So I think I just need more information and just to see this game actually playing. And if it's anything like that, I'm absolutely willing to jump into it. But also I need to know like how difficult we talking. It looks I could just tell it's hard just by the aesthetic.
That's my thing. It looked Ninja Gaiden Sekiro style. I'm interested because like if I did some digging on that day because I have a friend who's super into anything Japanese, Chinese styled.
Yeah.
And the team that's making this is the only thing they've done before is like a handful of mobile games, including some games called Phantom Blade something.
Oh, is this in a series then?
So it's in a series that exists on mobile, and I think it's not even like mobile in the States. So this is like its first real game, but does developing on mobile translate well coming to PS5? Like you're saying, there's a part where he like takes two swords out, he's running, he's swinging them hard, and he's clashing with the enemy. And I'm like, that's got to be a cutscene, right? That can't be
because it looks kind of gameplay. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it's like a weird like. I'm curious about it. It's one of those things, and yeah, is it more Devil May Cry? Is it a whole lot more Sekiro? I don't know if I have the patience for that. So we'll have to see. That's one that's definitely on my list though to keep an eye on
for sure.
Then we saw the sort of long-awaited sequel. I was surprised that it even took this long. We got Ghost Runner 2. I still haven't played Ghost Runner. I do own it because I think they gave it away on PS Plus at one point. But it's one of those things where I do really want to play it, and this will hopefully push me to finally want to go through Ghost Runner 1. Are you a fan of the series? Or the game? I guess it's only a game so far. But
yeah, same as you. I have it. I've literally downloaded it. I've just never played it before. I just never got around to it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try Ghost Runner 1. I've heard nothing but good things about it, but I can't speak to it right now because I haven't played it.
Yeah, I heard it's real good, and it's not like break your control difficult. So next up, the super long waited, and man, this leaked in that NVIDIA leak. We're talking like 3 years ago now. Helldivers 2, which we have not seen since. I played the original Helldivers on Vita, and I know it was like cross launch on like Vita, PS3, and PS4 at the time, if I'm not wrong.
No, you're right.
In 2015, which was, my goodness, it's a long time to be developing this. But it looks cool. I'm worried because not worried so much, but though they showed some gameplay and some stuff like that, I'm curious if the original one was all top down almost, if not strictly top down. This one, I don't know if that was just for cinematic effect, they changed the camera angle, or is it switching to more of a third person? Is there going to be like a sort of cross in between the two? But I remember liking this a lot at the time. I remember, there was I only knew a handful of people with Vitas at the time, so we played it on Vita. But it worked well, as I remember, and I thought it was super cool. A lot of mechanics were just so over the top and like extra. Like I remember if you reloaded while you had bullets in your clip, you just would lose the whole clip, so you would lose like the whole set of ammo. Like if you were to obviously really remove a clip from a gun. So it was super cool. I liked it a lot. It's one of those things I'd like to go back to. I don't know if the game is. I don't remember if it was strictly online. I don't know if it still exists or if it's something I can re-download somewhere on my PS5 or PS4. But yeah, are you a fan of Helldivers?
Yeah, I liked the first one enough on Vita. I was never blown away by it, so that's why, like, with Helldivers 2, I'm probably good on that. Like, I liked it, but I was like, I didn't love it. But no, I'm glad to see it be able to come back. Yeah, they did seem to have changed the camera angle, which is interesting, from top down to third person. But, you know, the team-based, like, I remember it being a lot of fun. It's just one of those things where I didn't really like it on my own. Like, with people, I think it can be fun, but on its own, I didn't think it was particularly designed well to kind of compensate for an individual. I think it got very frustrating very quickly on your own. And some games are just not really optimized for, like, individual play, despite the fact that they might say they are. And yeah, Helldivers is one of those that unless you can get a team together, it's probably not going to be a great time for you. So I'll probably pass on this one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I feel you on that one. Next up was Sword of the Sea, and I'm actually having a blanking. What was Sword of this? Oh yes, I'm sorry, the Journey game.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why I was having a brain blank. Yeah, I actually almost even thought that it was a Journey too, almost to the when I first saw the trailer rolling up. But yeah, these games are always having a nice. I always like to appreciate this game. I haven't played them all. I know there's like a couple of them. You know, like the Pathless and stuff like that. I've played all for a little bit, but I thought this one looks even really cool. I see, you know, riding on a sword through this, be snowboarding, basically on sand and all this extra stuff developed by Giant Squid. It looks really cool. It's something that I do have a respect for these games. It's something I do find unfortunate. I just never really have the time to actually play them. But how are you? How do you feel for this? I can't call them a series, but this style of game.
Yeah, I mean, I liked their previous games. I loved Journey. Abzu was pretty fun. I haven't played the Pathless, so I'm definitely down to try this game. But it's not like must play for me. So it'll be one of those things where it's like when I have time, I'll probably play it.
Yeah.
But as of right now, their track record's pretty solid with me. It's a very kind of serene experience though for me. It's like something they make decompression games for me. Not games that I really get like locked into necessarily, but I kind of like dive in and out of. And previously their titles are a lot shorter, so they're nice little chunks of time that you kind of dive into a new world. But yeah, I'll definitely play this, but probably not day one.
Yeah, I'm curious what it looks. It looked really like artistically beautiful, and I'm like, man, I kind of want to see that like on my PS5 just to experience it. Next up, we got another look at the Resident Evil 4 remake in PSVR 2. So the VR mode that's coming to Resident Evil 4 remake. And it looks good. You know, it looks what I assumed it would look like. Obviously, I'm glad it looks more like what they did for Resident Evil 8 Village than what they did with Resident Evil 4 VR a couple years ago, where it was more on rails. But it looks cool. If I get a VR again, I would like to. I had that whole issue with my VR, so I had to send it back, and that's actually a whole story of its own. I had to go legal on them to get my money back.
Wow.
Yeah. But in a world where, because now that you can actually just go get these VRs in store, like I was at Target over the weekend and they had VRs there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can get them everywhere except Amazon, I want to say, but like everywhere else seems to have them. So if you, in a world where I get it again, this is obviously one of those first games I would like to do. I just played through Resident Evil 4, so I'm not dying to go through Resident Evil 4 again, but maybe if I get another VR again, it'd be nice to load up Resident Evil 4 remake to do a playthrough in VR. It would be interesting. We've gone over this. I know you don't really play too much VR, but how'd you feel about at least seeing Resident Evil 4 remake?
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, this is a prime example of exactly the type of game I'd probably want to play in VR. I loved the RE4 remake, so it looks great, and I'm glad that it seems like Capcom really does have a commitment to putting a lot of these games in VR and supporting quality VR ports. These are not kind of just like BS throwing out there. It's like the game is properly playable, looks fun, dynamic. I love the reloading animations. Everything looks really, really solid. And I like that there's not this insane dip in quality of the experience between the regular version and the VR version. Maybe between RE4, the original, and the VR version. But at least they, it seems like they did 7, 8, and now 4 properly. So yeah, no, I'm excited for VR players.
Yeah, next up was a Towers of, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Agasaba? Something like that.
Sort of looked like and we have in our notes here Breath of the Wild like game, because it obviously has huge Breath of the Wild like feels to it, but it looks like it's building, no pun intended, building on that sort of build mechanic, growing. It's like almost building a village tower. I know they called it an open world fantasy game, but it's obviously showing us stuff about like constructing villages and growing your tribe. It has all these sort of ecosystem of stuff you need to like take care of. That's it. It looks cool for what it is. I'm not into those super micromanaging of games like this, where it's like gotta control the villages and make sure the stuff can sustain itself. But any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not touching this game. My girl is like very excited about it, so I'm glad she's looking forward to it. But no, I'm not touching this.
Yeah. I didn't think so. Again, it's one of those ones when I saw it, I was like,
I don't like building things really like that.
Yeah. Neither am I. Next up, Immortals of Avium. Avium, which, yeah, it looked kind of interesting. I was super confused on the aesthetic of it because we were going like sort of mythical, and if people thought that Ghostwire Tokyo was the Doctor Strange simulator, you have seen nothing yet. My goodness. It looks cool though. It does look cool. I'm not a fan of the name. It just something about it just threw me off. Some of the characters look a little generic, but I guess if the story itself is pretty good, I could see it being something kind of interesting, especially at a time where I have some time to play it. But this is one of those things where it's like maybe if someone I know starts playing it a lot, or a review comes up that tries to convince me. I thought it was kind of interesting though, at least something fresh, something a little new. What was your reactions to Immortals of Avium?
Yeah, gameplay looks solid. Not really sold on it though. Again, yeah, it's one of those things. If it gets really solid reviews, people are really rocking with it. I'll give it a shot. I like the kind of first-person Doctor Strange kind of gameplay. Again, from like Ghostwire was great, and so jumping into that in a more fantasy environment, I think could be fun. But I need to see kind of more information about it, because everything surrounding the gameplay didn't really do it for me. Didn't really like the character design, the dialogue, none of that. So I would need a little bit more information to see kind of like what the moment-to-moment gameplay looks like, traversal, like, just what are you actually doing in this game? Because I know it's not just all boss fights. So what does the rest of it look like? And then maybe I can make a more informed decision.
Very true. Very true. We got a couple looks at other VR2 games, a couple PSVR 2 games. They showed that Beat Saber was finally available on PSVR 2. Kind of talk too much more about that, but we can end the showcase and end the episode today. Talking about a nice deep look at Spider-Man 2. We finally got a real good look at it. They've been so quiet for so long that people were, starting to get a little nervous. Because we have no sort of amped up to it. But yeah, we saw a look at it. Obviously, from the original announcement we saw last year, we knew Venom was going to take a place. And if you played Spider-Man 2018, we knew that Venom was going to take a big part in the next one. So yeah, we got our first look at what Peter looks like in the black suit, his abilities in the black suit. The sort of what I call GTA switching to Miles looks really cool. And sort of what the scope is, because everyone's wondering, you're just going back to New York for what would seem like the third time now. And how does that look? And we saw that a little bit more with the interactiveness of bridges, and there's that whole sort of QT water scene when you're going after enemies. But the big look, obviously, was gameplay-wise, mechanic-wise. We saw some of the HUD finally. We saw, obviously, almost all the voice actors are back. And the game just looks really good. Thing is, I know we're going to keep seeing stuff. I'm done. I don't need to see anymore. That's it. Call it a wrap. That's a day one purchase for me, obviously. And I think, obviously, the same for you. But I do understand we're probably going to see a whole bunch more. But what was your initial reaction to finally getting a look at Spider-Man 2 gameplay?
Yeah, I'm very positive on everything they showed. Mm-hmm. My main issue is that they showed way too much cutscene. Way too much. That's an entire scene of the game that I'm like, bro, what are you doing? I love that much gameplay. I'd take 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay. I just don't need 10 to 15 minutes of like mixed that and like actual cinematics. Like there's story that is developing here. But yeah, I love seeing Miles there. You know, he's essentially my favorite superhero, so I'm always down to get him in pretty much anything. And I like the symbiote look. You know, it's a very debated topic amongst Spider-Man fans about the depictions of symbiote suits. Obviously, there is the kind of classic Secret Wars black spandex kind of classic look, like it's literally just a black outfit. But it looks akin to his regular suit, just black. So it looks like just a suit change. And then there are the kind of living organism kind of iterations of it where it looks like a bonded alien to him. And that's the direction they're going here. There's almost kind of a wetness look to it. I like the bonded alien look personally a lot more. I love the power set. I love the adjusted thing. And I love that they are depicting the personality changes. Is it a bit much in the way he talks with the aggression at times? Yes, but I love the small touches of just the naturally more aggressive, violent side of what the symbiote does to him. It's a lot more subtle in the comics, I'd say. So it's very interesting to see that kind of take. It's very kind of like a serious version of Spider-Man 3, the movie. Which I think is very, very interesting. Because that's the thing about it, like where the super hyper like personality change is something that existed before Spider-Man 3, but it was a lot less subtle in it. And so I can appreciate them maybe taking another shot at that. Like, it's like, no, Peter's going to undergo some really severe changes really quickly. And it looks like this time they're probably going to do it right. So I'm really enjoying what I saw so far, and I'm excited to see how it plays. And I'm excited to see how much freedom you have to switch between them, or between Miles and Peter, or is it completely kind of scripted out? So like it'll switch it for you. I wonder, because it would be really awesome to have like a GTA 5 approach, where like maybe there are fixed times where you have to play as one character, but generally when you're playing around the world, you can switch between them at however you want. That would be my preference, and that's how I think it's probably going to be like. But we'll see. And I know there were some people let down by the lack of like co-op. I guess some people really got convinced about the multiplayer aspect of it. But I'm not mad with it remaining single player, so long as you have some degree of freedom to switch between them. And yeah, that's for the most part how I feel.
Yeah, Sam, and I agree with you. It's got to be a nice. And I would have wanted it to be where, some sections, yes, you have to play as, especially if you're doing main campaign. Some places you've got to play as Peter, some you got to play as Miles. But if you think of like, the times where you're just collecting collectibles, doing side missions, stopping crime, I don't see the harm in letting me play as, selecting one or the other. Especially just because I think, especially in this one, they're going to play so uniquely different.
Yeah.
Miles already plays so differently, so sometimes I just want to do. Like, his stealth missions are 1,000 times better than the stealth missions as Mary Jane in 2018. Yeah. So don't give me that. Just give me Miles and Peter, So it's exciting. I think so, too. I'm also a fan of this design of the suit. I like how, like, some parts of it look almost sleek, but then there's, like, it's like where the blue would be on his suit looks very alien, wet, sort of alive sort of situation. And then other parts of it look very still. The eyes seem to, like, scrunch and crunch a little bit like if it's alive, obviously because he doesn't have his lens on. I like it a lot. Again, being such fans of Spider-Man in general, and then of the the huge verse of comic suits, styles, enemies. It looks like we're continuing that trend, and obviously I'm gonna love this game. Obviously, it's gonna be up there for me.
Yeah. My only question is just kind of a Spider-Man fan at this point. Is like, is this a Spider-Man and Miles Morales game, or is this a Spider-Man game bringing in Miles Morales? Because I'm very curious to see if Miles is going to have this kind of intimate connection. This would be the first time we see this arc, this symbiote arc, with Miles present, with another Spider-Man being able to kind of play off of and maybe resist against Peter being overtaken by the will of the symbiote. And so that's also really interesting, and I'm curious to see how much of Miles's story is kind of folded in. There are so many characters that exist in the Miles universe, like Starling, his girlfriend, and his surrounding cast. I'm really curious to see if they kind of like fold that in, and his little sister Billy and all these things. So I'm really, I'm hoping they fold him in a little bit more, because I hope it's not just like, okay, we gave him his own game now, so we're not gonna. We'll include him because he's part of the mythos of the Spider-Man universe now, but beyond that, we don't need to do too much. I'm hoping that he's like properly folded in, and you get just as much Miles as you get as Peter, and that's just as a huge Miles fan. I'm spoiled, so I'm asking for a little bit more. But yeah, no, I'm loving everything I'm seeing so far, and I just am gonna avoid seeing anything else at this point, because I've seen everything I need to see. I see how it plays. I've seen how, to some degree, navigation is, and how web slinging looking, the choreographing. I'm sure the upgrade mechanisms are going to be a little bit different than the other one. I can figure it out as I go along, but other than that, I'm going to avert my gaze when they show it off again.
Yeah, same here. That's it. I don't want to see it. See you in well, they didn't give us a date. They just said fall 2023, but you assume, I think they said they were striding for September or something like that.
They haven't given a concrete date yet, so yeah, which is interesting that they've avoided not putting a date. So I guess they really probably want to avoid a slip, is my guess. Like they're not 100% sure that I mean, it looks far along, so it doesn't. I have no doubt that they're gonna finish in time, but yeah, maybe they just want to avoid any unnecessarily delays until they're 100% sure that they can launch in fall. And again, we're still many months away from what fall can be November, so it could be a while. So yeah, maybe they're just holding off until they're in a more finished state, maybe closer to going gold, before they want to put a date on it.
Yeah,
that's my guess.
Which is respectable. I'd prefer that than the latter.
Yeah, because nothing's more annoying than a delay from a date that no one asked you to put on it. You know what I mean? Like they go out of way ahead of time, and they put some date out there, and then they miss it by a while, and it's like, nobody forced you to put that date out. We love a window. I'll take a window. Just give me a rough estimate. But yeah, no, I'm down with them holding off until you guarantee. And if you don't know until the last second, it is what it is, and just wait. But I'd much prefer them hold it.
Yeah, I agree. But that was a showcase, all in all. I thought it was a solid showcase. I think it was disappointing in some aspects. Again, we didn't get too much from the first party. No Factions wasn't there. A couple of the other companies' first parties been pretty quiet. I think it was sort of funny and dirty of Xbox to be tweeting alongside of the show, basically saying, "This is coming to us too. This is coming to us too." Which is fine. It is what it is.
It's a fair point. It's petty, but it's a fair point.
It's petty, but at least wait till the showcase is over. It's like Metal Gear was announced, and then they tweeted like a box and an exclamation point. I'm like, cute Xbox, it's fine, but okay, it is what it is. But all in all, I thought it was good. I think it was, again, a lot of good stuff there. Again, people were hoping I think people's expectations were way too high. I don't know what else you were expecting. I mean, we got a Metal Gear collection, a Metal Gear remake. Alan Wake 2's been something people have been demanding for a long time. I guess, Bungie's doing a not Destiny thing. So it was good for me. I thought it was solid. I thought it was exciting to know that, man, one of my systems at least is going to be getting a lot of use. So it's going to be really cool. All in all, what were your thoughts on the showcase?
Yeah, I'm not as disappointed as I feel like a lot of people, where I saw a lot of tweets about it where people were kind of let down. I didn't really have super high expectations from here. The only expectation I had that maybe wasn't met was, it was just a little quieter from the first party than I expected. They did have some banger third party games, which I really appreciate. And they did have some first party stuff there where we got, we got Helldivers, we got Spider-Man. Like, they did show some stuff. But, I think I am a little curious as to, like, there was some notable omissions that I'm like, what is Sucker Punch working on? You know what I mean? Like, and they're in a weird place where some of the big boys, they've gone recently. So like Naughty Dog, we know, is working on Factions. We know Santa Monica just kind of finished their thing, and Horizon just came out and stuff like that. So like I understand that like some people are probably not in a place to show off anything because anything they have is probably really early in development. But yeah, there was some first party teams. I'm like, I wonder where you've been. And it was a little quieter from the first party because I really did feel like it was going to be an all hands on deck moment where it's like, this is what all our teams are working on. Some people are going to have cinematics, some people are going to have logos, some people are going to have gameplay. That's what I expected just because of the way kind of how Sony operates historically. But it's fine to me. I think it was a generally solid showcase. I think if any other, people are disappointed because it's PlayStation. I think if this was a Nintendo or Xbox conference, maybe people would be a little bit more forgiving. Because, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think at this point they're on a high and they've had a really quality output from the first party for the last couple of years. So yeah, when they're ready to do this massive showcase, people are expecting really high quality stuff. And if that's not really hit across the board, then people are going to have some feelings about it. But generally, as far as I was concerned, they met what I needed to do, because even one thing I went into it was, hey, where's factions? They answered that for me. It's screwed. So that answered my question. So as far as I'm concerned, they gave me a little something. That's Metal Gear. They have Spider-Man. I'm super sold on, and they reminded me of some existing things that are going to be really fun to play, like Final Fantasy. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with it. Things are looking good for PlayStation, and I look forward to maybe getting a better view of what their slate actually looks like from the first party, because that is not much more filled in than before the showcase, to be honest with you. I'll give them that, where it's like it was pretty empty for the rest of the year, other than Spider-Man is what we knew. That hasn't changed too much from the first party perspective, so it seems like for the most part, from first party offerings, it's going to be Spider-Man, and pretty much the rest is going to be filled in with major third party releases like Final Fantasy, Assassin's Creed, and stuff like that, which is fine with me. I mean, first party, third party, good games are good games. I don't really care, but it does lead to some questions as to like where some people are.
Yeah, that is the mystery. What is Sucker Punch doing? What is, I know Santa Monica just went, but they obviously have that second project, whatever Cory Barlog is working on.
Wolverine somewhere, yeah.
Wolverine is somewhere. So that's Insomniac. So they're obviously on the Spider-Man train. So
yes, they can't do both. I'll give them some grace.
But if they were comfortable showing them both at the last State of Play, so you could at least. Anyway, it was a solid show. I liked it.
Yeah, totally. Well, long show today, and next week we'll have some more games out. By that point, Street Fighter will be out, and I'm pretty sure we'll both have it at that point, so I'm really excited to diving into that. And then we'll also be into June at that point, and I think we have some more games coming out in June. It might be a bit, because is Final Fantasy in June? I think so.
Final Fantasy is like June 22nd.
Okay, so we won't make it in time for the next episode, but the episode after that, we should be able to talk about it. So, we'll see you guys in the next episode. This is NeoVintage Podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope you guys all enjoyed.
And we'll see you then. Bye.